What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Cursed Urban. I'm Dan. I'll be your host this evening. As you can tell, well, the title was a dead giveaway, but the scenery, I'm out at the campground right now, chilling in the tent, here to bring you some scary stories with festive feel. Got my green and red lights set up, got a nice cup of hot cocoa, done up with all the trimmings, marshmallows, sprinkles, whipped cream, everything. Can enjoy this on this nice chilly evening and tell you guys some scary tales. But first, I'd like to make a couple announcements. One, Merry Christmas to everybody. Hope you guys have a outstanding Christmas and New Year's. I'll probably see you on another upload before then, where I will wish you Merry Christmas again. But for now, here's one. And number two, if you enjoy these videos, I'm probably going to move them over to their own channel. So make sure to check the description below. At the very top will be a link to Tales at the Trailhead. It's a tongue twister. And that is probably where I will be putting most, if not all, of these type of narration, scary storytelling videos from here on out. As much as I enjoy doing them, and I continue to do that, and I plan on continuing to do them, they kind of clash with the content that's on Cursed Urban now. I don't think these make a good fit for this channel, so I'm putting them on their own separate channel. I already have some narrations up there from before, so if you'd like to support, which I would appreciate, check down there. Link is in the description. Tales at the Trailhead, and there will be more of these narration videos. So let's get into it. Today I have a couple stories for you, a couple Christmas stories. One I heard a long time ago, another viewer sent in to me to relay, and we give a special shout out to them. Thank you for sharing your story. The first one is a little bit of a shorter story, and it takes place actually in a neighboring state here, just up north in Wisconsin. Well, actually, it's pretty far up in the north woods of Wisconsin, and it takes place Christmas Eve. So Bill and his brother and their family, his brother's name was James, Bill and James and their family would always go over to their grandma and grandpa's every single Christmas Eve. It was a tradition for as long as they had been alive. Bill was 24 now, and James was about 28, and the tradition still carried on. So every year they would, go to grandma and grandpa's house, and as I said, these guys, they lived way up north. They lived way up in the north woods of Wisconsin. And Bill and James kind of came from more the middle of the state. There's a 2-hour drive from their place to where their grandparents were. And in that 2-hour drive, it goes from, kind of rural to extremely rural. So, but they enjoyed it up there. Grandma and grandpa had their own property that backed up to a forest, and they had like 25 acres of land all to themselves, and they had all the toys for the grandkids. They had ATVs, they had snowmobiles, they had go-karts, they had everything. They had a pole barn full of this stuff. So all the kids loved going to grandma and grandpa's. Like I said, the grandkids are now the great grandkids, and so they're all up there for Christmas Eve. Bill and James, they go up there with their parents. They see everybody. They see their aunts. They see their uncles. They see their cousins. Everybody's up there, and it's a great time. Grandma has put out her famous amount of appetizers, which is enough to feed every single person in the county twice over. She would stay up, for 2 days almost, and just make all sorts of baked goods and appetizers and treats for the family. And So, they went there. They had the appetizers. They had a little bit of they had a couple sandwiches, a couple drinks, and it was just a good time. Everybody was able to make it. So the house was packed, the house was just packed with the family, and they were having a great time there. And, they see a lot of people they hadn't seen for a while, and, make talk. Eventually they get done eating, and they move to open presents. And that's what they did. They spent the next hour and a half or so going around, taking turns by twos. So they want one person at a time. They'd be there till sunrise, if it was so many people in that house. So 2 people would open their presents at a time. And it took them about an hour and a half still to get through all the presents. And, yeah, it was, great Christmas Eve night. I'm sure many of you are familiar with, that exact scenario. I am myself. It's what I used to do at my grandmother's house. So, after that, it was still early in the evening. They did get started pretty early. Still early in the evening. I mean, it was getting a little bit later. It was about 7 o'clock right now. 7 or 8 o'clock. And, they were just sitting there. Everybody was, doing their respective thing. The cousins were hanging out. The younger kids were playing with their new toys. The adults were having coffee, sitting around the dining room table. Everybody was kind of spread out around the house. And this year in particular, they hadn't gotten much snow yet up north. The ground was still clear. It was still able to be seen. So Bill and James, they are talking, and they're looking out the back window towards the backyard, reminiscing about, growing up at Grandma and Grandpa's and, all the stuff they used to do back in the forest, ripping the go-karts and ATVs all over the place. And they get to talking, and one of them says, do you think that old hiking trail is out there? Because there's a small hiking trail that went through the forest that kind of circled their grandparents' property. It was more like a half circle, like a U. The trees came to about the midpoint on either side. Then, as I said, it backed up to the forest. Like, I wonder if Grandma and Grandpa maintained that trail all these years. After all, the younger grandkids and great grandkids still were out there all the time. So, James and Bill, why don't we go investigate it? And that's what they did. They went outside, went out back. Their presence was not missed. Everybody, as I said, was doing their own thing, So they slipped out back. And they had the lights on their phones out. They walked back, across this huge sprawling property. 20 acres is a lot. I mean, they had about 6 acres to walk from the back door of Grandma's house to where the forest started. So it's still, a long walk, especially, dark at night, and all you have is 2 cell phone flashlights. And they walk back there, and it's been a while. They are looking at this forest, they're looking at these trails and everything, and they're just reminiscing. They're just like, wow. And I can't believe that, this is where we spent our, childhood. This is, where some of the best times with our family have happened. This is great. It's great to be back here. And they're just walking along the perimeter of the forest, looking for this trail, this old hiking trail. Well, it was not only a hiking trail, doubled as an ATV trail or whatever you wanted to, take down. And at one point, even a bicycle trail. And they find what kind of looks like it. From their memory, they find what kind of resembles Grandma's old, or Grandma and Grandpa's old hiking trail. And it looks different. It obviously hadn't been maintained in not a super long time, but in the past year or two, things have definitely grown up. They saw branches growing over the trail. They saw some small saplings coming out of the ground. All the grass was dead, so there's no grass, but they found the trail, and they was, a little bit neglected. So, like, what, let's hike down it. Nobody's going to miss it. So there's just everybody's still going to be here for another 2-3 hours bare minimum, if not longer. If not, this thing might go to 1 a.m. So, like, let's take a hike down it real quick, for a hike down memory lane, quite literally. So the two boys start walking down the trail, phone flashlights in hand. And they're just walking. They still remember the layout a little bit. The branch offs, the twists and turns. They still remember it a little bit, but not like the back of their hand like they used to. It's a little bit different now, especially at night. So they're walking, and that's when James looks at his phone. He looks at it. He's like, "Oh man, I didn't even realize that my phone's about to die." Sure enough, as he said that, cut off. They're down to one flashlight now. Bill looks at his phone, and it's fine. He's still got 72% battery or so, 70%. Like, oh, we're good. We got my light. It's fine. Just stay close. So it's not like they're gonna get turned backwards. They know, like, if the trail's here, all they have to do is head south a little ways, and they'll end right back in Grandma's backyard. So they're not worried about getting lost or anything like that. So they're walking, they're laughing, and that's when they hear something. They hear a branch break, very loud branch break, further back into the forest. And right when they hear this, they think, James thinks Bill did it. Bill thinks, James might have stepped on something. So for the first second, they both brush it off, just, for momentarily. But then they realize, that it wasn't by them. It was further back. And so Bill turns to James. He's like, "Did you step on something?" He's like, "No, but I heard that too." Like, what is that? That was really loud. That sounded like a deer, like, running full force, at something in the forest and smacked into it, like, with its chest. And so they're looking, their phone flashlight is not that great. It's a cloudy night, so there's no moonlight out. And they're looking like, what's back in there? As I said, these guys have grown up around the forest their whole life. They're not scared of anything. They know what's out there. They know they have, coyotes out there. They have deer out there. They know there's black bears up there, but they never see them on the property. There's the occasional wolf they hear about, but it didn't sound like any of that. It sounded like something just broke a tree branch, like broke a very, very large tree branch. So they're sitting there, and they're thinking, like, what could have done this? What is out there with enough power to break something like that? And again, they didn't hear anything running through the forest. They didn't, nothing like that. So after a little while, they're just staring into the darkness. They're like, whatever, like, that's weird. Cross it off, resume their walk through the woods. So they get a little bit further. And this was only about, a 15-minute, hike, maybe 20 minutes if you're really taking your time, until it circles back onto the property, just on a different side. And they know they have about another 5-minute walk back from the point they're at. And that's when they hear something else. Coming from, once again, the darkness of the forest, it sounds like a very low grunt. Like something breathing heavily, but like very, with a lot of bass in it. Like they can feel whatever it is out there breathing. Like they can feel it in their chest. And they stop and they look back into the forest again. They look at each other and they're like, what is that? Whatever it is, it sounds gigantic. It doesn't sound like something small. So they got their light, trying to shine their light back there. And at this point, they're getting kind of nervous because they're like, all right, something that makes that kind of noise. There's no other option that it can be than a bear. That's got to be a bear. It's a very deep noise. I don't know what else could make that. It has to be a bear. So they're shining their light back there. They're trying not to make any sudden movements. They kind of want to run, but of course they know that would be a gigantic mistake. And they just stay there, waiting and listening to this thing breathe, because it's still just breathing back there. And then it stops. And they really focus in. Both of them kind of lean in to where they heard the noise from. And they just sit there and they're listening to hear if they can gather any more information, if they can hear anything else. That's when they hear stomp, stop, stop. They hear these very, very quiet footsteps. Very quiet, but they can tell the diameter of them is absolutely gargantuan. They can hear whatever this thing is walking through the forest and walking towards them, because it's getting louder. Now the forest is covered with a bunch of pine needles and everything, so it makes the footsteps a little bit softer. They're like, what is that? They don't say anything. They just look at each other like, what is that? And they're just standing there. And the footsteps stop. They don't hear it again. Footsteps just stop. They have the phone out like this, looking through the forest. I can't see anything. They're just kind of panning left and right with the light, trying to get a glimpse of anything that could be making this noise. And as they pan from left to the right again, the flashlight illuminates something that they did not expect. The flashlight falls on a face. A face that they almost missed because it was right next to a tree. It was a long face, almost like a human face. Same structure, same eyes, nose, mouth. But the eyes were yellow. They were bright, reflective yellow, like a cat's. And it looked like this face was like kind of bent over, kind of hunched down, like from how its face looked like. But the weirdest thing was this face was completely covered in thick gray, dark gray and black hair. It's like and black was like in patches around this. It was very, very long, like almost like a beard, but all over. And the light just fell on this face. And it took a second for them to register it, like what they were looking at. But when they did, when they caught the hint of those yellow eyes, they were like, oh, what is that? And they both ran. Can you blame them? I can't. You know, they saw this thing and they just ran as fast as they could. They did not look back. They ran and ran, and they made that 5 minutes from where they were at to Grandma's house in about 45 seconds. And they got out of those woods fast. But as soon as they got out of those woods and hit that clearing, they stopped and they turned back around because their curiosity was just so high. They turned back around. They looked into the forest. They didn't see anything. They didn't hear anything. It was just silence, like it was before, like when they started the evening. And they kind of sat there, just still in silence, just looking at everything and just taking it in, just straining their ears, trying to hear anything. And no other sounds came to them. And they kind of gave each other a look like, did we see something? Or was that, with the look that they shared with each other, they both definitely confirmed the other's fear that there was something back there. So they slowly walked back to Grandma's house. They're just both staring at the ground as they walk, just like trying to think what was that? Like, what did we just see? And they get back to Grandma's house. They open up the door. They go into the kitchen. Nobody pays attention to them. Still, everybody's doing their own thing. Nobody even acknowledges them walking to the door except for one person. And that's old Grandpa. He's sitting in his recliner, watching a Christmas movie on TV. He hears the door open, turns around, he looks at them. And he sees the look on their face. And all Grandpa says to him is, "You saw him, didn't you?" And Bill and James just stop. They look at their grandpa and they're like, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "Yes, sir. You saw him." Grandpa just gave a little bit of laugh, little chuckle, sit back in his recliner, watch the show. After that, they never could really get a good answer out of their grandpa. Every time they went over there, they'd press him for more and more information, but Grandpa would just give him a little bit of tidbits, like, "Oh, yeah, he's around sometimes," and, "Oh, I saw him the other day. I don't know what it is." It's the most nonchalant thing ever. To this day, they still have no closure on what lives on their grandparents' property. But sounds to me like it's a Bigfoot. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So that's our first story for the evening. Nice Christmas Eve story. And our second story, finish up this hot chocolate so I'm not distracted by it because I don't want to I got a lot to remember on the second one. It's a long one. This one takes place on Christmas Day. Got that peppermint hot chocolate. So good. Good. So this next story takes place on Christmas Day. And I would like to say, you know, it takes place in, you know, on a nice white Christmas, you know, in the Midwest or, you know, somewhere out there, you know, just the classic Christmas backdrop. But it's actually the opposite. This story comes from Florida, specifically the area of the Everglades. Now, this follows two people, and shout out to them. I'm changing their names a bit for this story, but shout out to them for sending me this story. David and June. So David and June were in their mid-30s, and they became snowbirds quite early, which, if you're not familiar with what a snowbird is, it's usually an older person who goes down to Florida for the winter. Don't get me wrong, I would absolutely love to do the same thing. Then again, I'm an old man. But they became, you know, snowbirds early. They got themselves a nice RV, booked themselves a nice resort every year. They jump in the RV at right after Thanksgiving, sometimes even Thanksgiving night, and head down to Florida. And that's where they would stay for, December, January, February, most of March, and sometimes a little bit of April if they needed to. Just go to tow a car with, and they were happy. They both had remote jobs, so they couldn't ask for anything better than how they were set up. So this was one of those years. They had gotten down there. They'd been down there for almost a month. Actually, I think about a month, because they left Thanksgiving night, actually, after they did the whole family thing. They said, screw it. We're already packed. Let's just leave. Let's get down there a little bit early. Because they already had their whole thing booked up or booked out, so they could check in whenever they felt like it. Their spot was waiting for them. So, pack up the RV. Pack what's left that they needed to put in the RV. Got their little car hooked up to it. Went down to Florida. And as I said, you know, they've been there a few weeks. And fast forward to Christmas. You know, it was just them down there for Christmas. They didn't really have any family. That was the only thing that they didn't like, is that they, you know, didn't have any family, and they always felt like they were missing out on stuff back at home, because everybody was, you know, celebrating back at home. So that's the one thing that always, like, kind of, you know, ate at them. It's like, you know, we're not with the family for Christmas. Like, you know, it sucks, so that's kind of the trade-off. Sometimes, like, once or twice, they would actually drive back up. They drive their car back up, or fly. They flew once just to do Christmas, and it went right back down. But this wasn't one of those years. You know, this year they were just, you know, gonna FaceTime the family, say hello to everybody, FaceTime their parents, and kind of do a virtual present opening, because they had already, their parents had sent them the presents before they'd left, and they're like, you can't open these till Christmas. Like, no, we won't. So it's Christmas Day now, and they do all that stuff in the morning. You know, they do that. Their parents were, you know, busy because David and June's respective siblings, you know, were coming to their parents' houses. So they were busy. They did the whole virtual thing with their parents pretty early on in the day. They made a nice Christmas lunch kind of for themselves in the RV. They celebrated Christmas together, exchanged gifts with each other, and yeah, it's just kind of a relaxing day. Just a chill and relaxing Christmas. Of course, like I said, they missed their families, but they still had each other, and that counted for more than something. So, well, day goes on, and they finished lunch early. They finished all their Christmas stuff early, and it's only about 1 or 2 in the afternoon. They're like, what should we do? There's nothing to do. We don't want to sit here and just scroll on our phones on Christmas, just, lounge around and be lazy on Christmas. We need to do something, but nothing's open. So we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place. Well, David's like, you know what? We should go check out the Everglades National Park. Sounds like a great idea. We've never been there. All these years we've been in Florida, we've never been there. Should be pretty cool. Maybe see some alligators on Christmas. That's all it took. It was about an hour and a half drive from where they were down to the Everglades. They get in the car, head on out. They can pack up. It's like I said, it's getting, it's the middle of the day, but it's still getting towards the later part of the middle of the day. But, they pack up their shoes and everything, get in the car, head out before it gets any later. And they get down there. And they're like, oh, this is awesome. This is really cool. And now the Everglades is gigantic. And David's just been following the GPS the entire time. And they turn down this road, and they just keep going. Well, after about half an hour, June is kind of getting a little bit restless, and she's like, shouldn't we, be there by now? Shouldn't we at least see some parking lots or, some other signs of people here? Because they weren't paying attention. They were having a good time, just talking amongst themselves. And David's like, yeah, you're right. And he looks on the GPS, and he's still on the route that he set to the Everglades, to one of the main, parts of it. Yeah, this is really weird. He's like, well, and they kind of brush it off. They're like, you know what? Who's going, out here for Christmas anyways besides us? It makes sense. Nobody's really out here. And they kind of just push that worry aside. They're just like, it's whatever. It's weird, but it is Christmas. There's not a lot of people out. They keep driving. A few more minutes pass by, and the road splits. It comes to a T intersection. Well, the GPS shows the road going straight. But if the road went straight, David would just drive into some trees. So he's like, I guess I'll go right. So they go right. GPS doesn't correct itself. It keeps going. It keeps on the route, but it keeps telling him to turn left off the road straight into the trees. So it's not correcting itself. So David just, he just locks his phone and whatever. We'll find it. We'll find something. Another turn comes up. David goes left. Another turn shortly after that, David takes another right. And now they're on dirt roads. These roads are not paved. It went from a nice paved road to a unmaintained paved road to an even worse unmaintained paved road, straight up dirt. And they're just driving, they're driving and driving and driving. And now June is like, all right, we were pretty far in here. We should have seen at least one car by now, Christmas or not. We should have seen at least one car by now, or something, some sign of life, a parking lot, like a sign, nothing. We're just on some weird back roads. The GPS isn't working. Like, ugh, why do we have to do this? Like, I think we're getting lost. It's like, no. Let's just turn around, start over again. And now, by this point, it is getting a little bit later. So soon they're going to have to worry about the sun going down. And they don't know where they're at. So David turns around, heads back. And he's driving. And it starts looking really, really unfamiliar to him. Like, they did not remember seeing any, like, this trees, like, any type of landmark that they're seeing now when they're coming out there. And they keep going, like, he was like, I think I might have missed the turn. And June's like, I think you might be right. Yeah, I think you probably missed the turn. Like, well, should we turn around and look for it? Yeah, let's turn around. Like, we need to hurry up because we're going to start losing light real quick. It's like, how could I have missed the turn, So they head back. And they come to a turn. They see a turn. And Dave's like, oh, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. But June's like, no, that's not where it's at, because that is on the left side of the road. The turn we're looking for is on the right side of the road. So where does that go? He was like, I don't know. And also, by the way, of course, naturally, there's no service. So at this point, they have no maps to look at, nothing. There's no service. They have 1 bar, 0 data. So they're kind of on their own. They don't have a map. They don't have a road atlas. Nothing. They're not seeing anybody. They debate calling, 911 with that 1 bar of service. Like, we at least could get some directions. And then they're like, you know what? No. We're not looking like those people who got lost, No, we're not, we're not using up emergency services for our error. We have, we still have like a 3/4 of tank of gas and plenty of gear in there, plenty of food, everything, we could be stuck out here for 2 days. We'll be completely fine. Not like they'd want to. So they're like, yeah, whatever. So they keep driving around. And they just keep getting more and more lost. David thinks that they are just driving in a circle now, even though they keep taking different, like, roads whenever a turn comes. And June thinks that they're even further in than they thought they were. So here they are, lost in what they think is somewhere in the middle of the Everglades. And yeah, it's not good. They're starting to get a little bit concerned. They're starting to get, a little annoyed. It's starting to kind of bicker. The fractures of stress are starting to show themselves. So they decide to pull over. Take a breather, chill out, have a snack, and just regroup. So they get out of the car, turn the car off, they get out of the car, And at this point, the sun is setting. This is how long they've been out here now. The sun is setting, and, you know, they get out a couple power bars, they get out a couple bottles of water, and they're like, all right, look, we just need to start taking roads that go north. We just need to keep the compass in the car pointing north, keep taking roads that take us that way. Eventually we'll figure out our way. We'll figure out our way out. So that's the plan. You know, they're just gonna try and head one direction. If that one direction doesn't work, comes to a dead end, we'll go to the next direction. They have very little choice at this point. So, we're back in the car, and I start driving. As they're driving, though, something starts to feel off. Neither of them can put their finger on it, but something feels weird. Something feels out of place. They don't know what it is. But that question is soon answered. It's fully dark now. And as they're driving, they see something just run in front of the car. Run in front of the headlights. Like the headlights only illuminate this thing's feet and not the rest of it. But it's really weird because its feet on the back look like almost oversized alligator legs and feet. They look scaly, with like larger nails. But its front feet are what's really weird. They look like human hands. And they see this just really quick go right in front of their car. They can't see the creature itself, but they see this. And David kind of taps the brakes just and keeps going. And he's like, hey, did you see that? And June's like, oh yeah, I think it was a deer or something. Like, did you see its feet? And she's like, yeah. So he realizes that she saw it too, but while he's interested and fascinated, she's really freaked out. So, you know, he's like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I think it was a deer. And they kept driving. And June's like, well, hey, let's see if we can get going a little bit faster. If she's really freaked out by this thing. And so they saw this thing run across the road. It ran from left to right. So they get to the next T intersection, and they saw this thing go right. June wants to get away from whatever she saw. You know, that's how much it scared her. She's like, take a left, David, go left. You know, she's trying, you know, to keep it cool and not be like, show how freaked out she is by this thing. She thinks it's silly, you know. She's had a few minutes to reflect on it. She thinks it's silly, but she still doesn't want to go buy it if she has the choice. So he's like, okay. So he takes left, he keeps going. About 2 minutes down the road, they see it again. Almost exact same circumstances. But this time they see more of it. They can see up to its elbow. And it does have human-like hands. Human-like hands that are covered in scales with nails about that long and sharp. Its back legs look like an alligator's with oversized feet. Long, thick claws like knives on each one of its toes. So they saw a little bit more of this thing. David hits the brakes a little bit even harder this time. You know, because it startled him. It scared. It came out of nowhere. So they keep going. June is sinking back in her seat a little bit. David's still kind of fascinated by what he saw. And this time it ran from the right to the left. So when they come up to they see another turn. This time the road goes straight, continuing on the way they are, or it goes right. June's like, David, take a right. Take a right. I saw that thing again. Let's keep moving away from that thing. And David's like, yeah, I agree. I don't know what that is. So they keep going. And they're driving for a little bit longer. And they come up to yet another turn. This time it's another T intersection. Like, here's their road. And a T is like this. They can go right. They can go left. And they're like, all right, which way should we go? Because before they were kind of using, like, when they saw the creature to decide which way they're not going to go and, go the opposite way. This time, it's just them. Again, they've had a few minutes to calm down a little bit. Like, all right, whatever it was is behind us. So do we go left or do we go right? I don't know. And they collectively decide they're going to go right. So David starts turning the wheel. He's got his high beams on. He's turning the wheel. Slowly going right. Slowly creeping right. And then his lights shine on something. And he hits the brake hard. Stops the car dead. In front of him is something they can't believe. It's this thing they've been seeing, except this time it's standing. It has long legs with very sharp claws. Its entire body is covered in scales that kind of change color, almost like a shade. Like, it starts out very dark, the top of this thing's head, and turns to a lighter color towards the middle, and then dark again towards the feet. They see its hands. Its hands do look like human hands. Its arms look very human, but again, just covered in scales. Its body, it looks like a person's body, but with no defining features. Just like what a body, if you just drew a shape and said that was somebody's body, that's how it looked. But this thing stood easily 7 feet tall from the ground to the top of its head. But as they looked up to its face, that's when they freaked out. Its face was that of what they described as a goat. A goat with a longer snout, sharp teeth, large horns that came and wrapped around like a mountain goat. And they said its eyes were this deep, deep crimson red that when their headlights hit them looked like it was glowing. They saw this thing. And they were like, absolutely not. And just stood there. They just stood there, and the lights were just enough to illuminate it, where they could see everything about it, but not bright enough to illuminate the ground behind it or anything like that. But yeah, they just stared at it. It stared back at them. And then June was the first one to snap out of it. He reached over, she's like, David, drive. And he's like, oh, yeah. So he cranks that wheel the opposite way, hits the gas, turns the corner, almost slides the car out into the ditch. But catches at the last second. And they just take off down the road. And they're just driving. June's looking back. David's looking in the mirror. He's looking at the side mirrors, making sure this thing's not following them. Even though if it was, they didn't have anything they didn't have a gun with them. They didn't have a knife. They couldn't do anything, do whatever it wanted. And that was the scariest part. They were defenseless against whatever this swamp creature was. But a few minutes later, they saw something that they recognized. And that was this weird tree that was broken and almost looked like the shape of an arch from how it was. And they both felt that same sense of joy in their chest at the same time. They knew they saw that tree on the way in. And they knew it was right at the beginning. So they kept going. And soon enough, that road, that never-ending road of infinite twists, turns, and misdirections, met with the main road. They stopped at that stop sign, sat back and breathed a sigh of relief. They left, went back to their camper, and I want to say never returned, but that's not true. They tried to come back a week later. Because over the course of a week, nerves calm down. Start thinking about things rationally and not the heat of the moment. And they're like, what did we actually see? Let's go down that road again. But this time actually mark our turns. They even brought their actual hiking GPS with them so they could keep an actual route of where they went. Like, we're going to get a notebook, we're going to get this GPS, and we're going to go down this road and figure out, and like explore the whole area, and we'll have it marked out so we'll know exactly how to get back. Plan's foolproof. They want to go back there and see what this was all about. So they head back again. But this time, they can't find this road again. It's only been a week. Nothing would have happened to it. They're just driving up and down this main road. I swear that turn-in was right here. Because when they put it in the GPS, it took them to a completely different point now. It took them to the park entrance instead of this weird off-road that it took them last time. And they're just driving up and down, like they see everything. They see the couple small businesses. They see the houses that they passed the last time, that they can't find this entrance. And after about half an hour, they give up. Half an hour just driving back and forth on this road, varying distances. They just like, this road doesn't exist. Like, did we just dream this the whole thing or what? We just went down this weird road that has now disappeared. How do you explain that? So they gave up and they decided, we're already out here, we're already down here. Let's stop and get dinner in a place that we haven't tried before. Let's find this small little restaurant that specializes, I guess, in some sort of, I don't know what it is, deli cut sandwich. I don't know. They decided to stop and try this, this sandwich. a really nice place, really nice little restaurant, cafe. And as they're sitting in there, they're just in silence, both kind of like thinking like, how could this happen? This doesn't make any sense. How, you know? And June puts something together that makes her feel almost dumb because she should have realized it earlier. She tells David, she's like, David, it was weird when we saw that thing, when we were lost the first time. Did you realize, like, every way that it went, we went the opposite way. And we almost went the wrong way until it physically blocked our path and forced us to go the way that led us out. It's like this weird looking creature saved us. It kind of gave us directions, like how to get out of here. And David kind of sat back in his chair, put his sandwich down, he's thinking about it. He's like, you're right. You're right. It's like it was trying to help us. Which adds even more mystery to what that place was, where it was, and what that creature was. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What could it have been? Any of you who live in Florida, have you heard any stories about a road like this, or maybe you've been seeing it yourself? Let me know. But that is our 2 Christmas stories for tonight. Yeah, very interesting. I read that one, that Florida one, a few times. I can't wrap my head around that. That's a crazy one. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this narration video. Like I said, if you are a fan of these videos, please go down there, click on that link to Tales at the Trailhead, where I will be narrating exclusively camping, well, kind of camping, outdoor, scary stories. And if you like them, I will be posting them on that channel. It's going to be a regular thing. So please go down there, check it out, show that channel some love, and I will have some uploads on there very, very soon. But, all right, guys, thanks for your support. Excuse me. Thanks for being here. Big shout out to our patrons and our YouTube channel members. Thank you guys for all that you do and all the help that you bring to the channel. And if you stuck around for these entire stories, big shout out to you as well. Thank you for that. Yeah, follow the new channel, or new old channel, I guess. Yeah. I will be back soon with a new Randonautica and a new camping video. So look forward to that. Make sure you got those notifications on. All right, guys, have a great night or day, wherever you're at. We'll see you very, very soon on the next video. Peace out.